and welcome to DudeCast TV. I'm your host, Norman Dexter, where I'm a dude who's going to talk about some shit. So today, I have titled this episode, The Right Way. Alright? Now, the reason the word right is in quotations is because it's a bit subjective. The more nihilistic view is that the universe exists and we're smaller than a speck of dust within it, and we don't really have control over anything. So to insinuate that we know the right way to do something is pretty fucking arrogant. So that's why it's in quotations. And that's why I give the air quotes in the thumbnail, because I want to be upfront. This may not work for you, but it worked for me. And so I'm going to give my best go at what the right way is. Now, what am I referring to? Well, considering I specialize in exercise, nutrition, and bodybuilding, I'm going to go through my personal experience with that gambit. Now, I'll give other examples. For instance, I think that the right way to approach particular, we'll call them controversial subjects, is through discourse, and I'll go into those examples also. But generally, I am just going to give some opinions, so try it out if you like it. Otherwise, tell me to eat shit, I won't mind. I promise. Okay? So let's start with the more general, broad overview of discourse. All right? It is May 16th, 2022. We are currently going through the ramifications of the leaked draft that may appeal Roe versus Wade. And a lot of people are really upset. A lot of people are really happy. And me being a man, and Roe v. Wade predominantly having to do with a woman's right to choose an abortion, and then the further controversial opinion on when a life is supposed to start in terms of a pregnancy and a fetus, there's a lot to consider. But as a man, as a biological male, I don't have the circuitry to comment, is my general viewpoint. However, there's always room for discourse. And to me, that's the right way to approach. Now, rather than telling somebody what to do, rather than telling somebody what they should think or do or believe, I think the better way to approach it is to somehow make it relatable for everyone. So me, as a man, I can't really comment on the life of the fetus or the life of the woman who has been impregnated. However, I can comment on what I'm observing in socioeconomic situations. For instance, roughly 50%, give or take a couple percentage points, of all abortions happen in poverty-stricken areas. Well, if you increase the amount of births in those areas and you take away those abortions, well, I think that means the poverty-stricken areas will grow in size and demographic, meaning the population of those under the poverty line is going to get larger, and that inherently means more government assistance, that inherently means more government aid, food stamps, welfare, and so on, and that inherently means that there's just going to be that much more of a ceiling for getting out of those situations. I mean, if you have another mouth to feed, body to clothe, and shelter, it's going to be more difficult to escape poverty if you have to care for another child. So that's just a fact. It just so happens also that a lot of these poverty-stricken areas have extremely high crime rates. When there's not much available to you in terms of opportunities, you get sucked into the wrong crowds, and tons of research has gone into showing that the lower poverty spots have excessive crime, particularly drug and violent crime. So, I would say that increasing those populations and thereby increasing the crime rates would not be so great for first responders. Sounds like it would be pretty traumatizing for police, firefighters, paramedics, and others to respond to that many more violent crimes. And that's not even to mention the collateral of innocent people caught in the crossfire and the magnification this puts on the criminal element. So that's an example of a very in the news, talking now area of discourse where I consider the right way is talking about it in ways that you can relate to. And for me, I think it's relatable to say I can observe what's going on in certain areas of the country, which is very mild. It's not like I live in poverty. It's not like I live in a crime-ridden area. So I can't relate in that way, but I can relate in that everyone else can see these things. Everyone else can read these studies and look at the socioeconomic impacts that this appeal would have outside of the ethical conflicts involved, so that with anything surrounding abortion, the life of a fetus, and so on. So you can effectively dismantle the typical arguments of when a fetus is considered alive, be it the heartbeat, be it its ability to survive outside the womb, what have you, and a woman's right to choose, with people saying things like, well, incest and rape, you can go ahead and get one, but everything else, not so much. But it would be pretty easy for the other side to say, well, why is it that the fetus is alive at this point, but, oh, if it's rape or incest, it's fine to go ahead and, unalive it. So it's a very, very messy discussion to have, particularly if you're a man, for reasons I've already explained, and it gets very messy. But the ability to have a discourse in a common area is a good way to find a compromise. That's what I think the right way is to approach a subject. And so there's that example. That's something that everybody currently in this current events situation, which is that this is not a current events podcast, but it is a good example of what's going on. Whether Roe v. Wade is appealed or maintained going into the future, this is a point in history that will be remembered. So I think this is a fine exception for what I do with this podcast. Now on to the bread and butter. When it comes to building muscle, when it comes to losing weight, when it comes to whatever fitness, health, exercise, or nutrition goals you may have, there is something very important to consider. Broadly, the concept is one of control. A little more narrowly, the idea of tracking. Now, the reason I say that is because you want to try and control as many variables as possible. Now, that does not include, when I say to track something, that doesn't include how you go about doing specific things. And so that's why I leave with control. Let me explain. If I say I want you to track your exercises, if I say I want you to track your reps, your sets, your weights, and which exercises you do, how long your rest times are, whether or not you superset something, whether or not you do it individually as a single exercise by itself, that is control. Yes, you can also track those things. Yes. However, it becomes more difficult when you're talking about, okay, well, how quickly did you do the movement? Okay, did you pause in the bottom? Did you count the negative? Meaning I went down into a squat, 1, 2, 3 counts, and then sprung up. That's a little harder to track, but it does exhibit the aspect of control. You are controlling the movement pattern and firing the muscles more appropriately based on how you do it. If you just drop in and shoot up, bouncing out of the squat, you may not be fully in control of that movement pattern. Now, for some people, they may do fine with this. They may be extraordinarily skilled in the squat or whatever exercise they're doing. But here's the thing, some people may not. I am one of those people. It has taken me years to perfect the squat, the deadlift, the bench press, and I'm still learning and I'm still finding things and I'm still running into hiccups and mistakes. I won't go into my personal hiccups and mistakes, but I will say it has been a fucking issue. A challenge to say the least. Lots of setbacks, a lot of back to the drawing boards. So, back to this concept of control. You want to control every variable you can. You want to try and control your sleep. You want to try and control your routine. You want to try and control your exercise, how often you exercise, how long you exercise, your sets, reps, weights, all that stuff I mentioned. You want to try and control the food and drink going into your body, when it goes into your body, and how much, what is going into your body, and when. And so you control all these variables so you can effectively choose, okay, this isn't working, I'm going to do something else. Okay, this is working, I'm going to keep doing this. And then here's the tricky part, you are in control of it. So you start to see whether you're progressing or not. Say you get to a point where, oh man, I'm getting weaker. Good example. Last couple of weeks, my chest exercises, my shoulder exercises, my arm exercises, and my back exercises have all gotten stronger. Even my calves have gotten stronger. But my quads and my hamstrings have been having an issue with my squat and my deadlift. And it's stemming from my left glute medius and my left piriformis. It's stemming from my hip, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. But I was getting weaker week by week. So what do? This is where the tracking comes in. I know what I've been doing, and so I know that I've been getting weaker, and I know I haven't been able to do the same thing that I could in weeks prior. So it's time to take what's called a deload week, or in fact, an active rest, so that my legs can get a little bit of rest, a little time to recover, get that fatigue and take care of it, but the rest of my body can maintain. Okay? The rest of my body can continue forward. I can continue working the rest of my body because they have all still been getting stronger. So while I tend to the issue of my left hip, the rest of my body can continue to progress. Now, when I say control broadly, that would not necessarily mean that I would know to do that and trail back unless I was tracking. So you see why these two concepts are very intertwined and necessary for one another. And so I can continue to progress, and then I can look back and say, okay, this is where I was, that's what I'm shooting for. Okay, I beat that now. So I learned to take a step back, which is hard to do when you're trying to go 1,000 miles an hour at all times. You want to give it 100 horsepower at all times, and sometimes you can't. Particularly me being a natural bodybuilder, somebody who doesn't use the super special supplements. I can't just push through those things and expect the drugs to do all the heavy lifting for me. The heavy lifting's all on me, and I have to watch for my body, and I have to watch to make sure that I don't hurt myself or stay stagnant. I did that way too long for way too many years. And this is why the tracking is so important, because you can be in control of all your variables, and you can push through, and you can David Goggins that shit all day and force yourself to do it regardless. But the issue becomes, are you really progressing? And that's where the tracking keeps the control aspects of what I'm trying to say honest. And it keeps you moving forward rather than stagnant or even stepping back or even getting injured. And so it's very important. Now, how did I come to this conclusion? Well, trial and error mostly, but I tried a lot of different shit. I listened to a lot of different people. I consume a ton of content from creators. I research a ton of articles, be it academic or otherwise, and I look for people's lived experience, and I look through studies, and I look through what's objective, what's subjective, and what's anecdotal. I look through everything. What is that everything called? That everything is called discourse. People talking. And there is nothing that turns me off more than somebody saying, this is the right way to do it. This is the only way to do it. This is how you will find success. I can't stand that. And that's why I commented the right way as the title of this episode, because it's ridiculous. I am satirizing that. Because there is no right way that's going to encompass every single person who ever lived and ever will live. All right? I can give you a good guess. I can give you my expert opinion on what would work, and it may very well work, but it may not even be optimal for you. It may help a little bit. It may bust through a plateau for you once or twice, but maybe you need something else. Maybe you need something better. Maybe you need something a little less stringent, because sometimes people can obsess over tracking their stuff, and then it turns into an addiction and a problem. Anything that you obsess over is an issue. I'm always very careful, particularly with people who have had eating disorders in the past, when it comes to tracking their food, as a very fine example. So it's really important that you remember this is you we're talking about, not me. I'm telling you what I have done. You can try it, but understand, you should be taking in other opinions, other ideas, other concepts, principles, and values, and seeing, does that work best for me? There is no dogma with this shit. Dogma is living with the ideas and values that other people have presented to you and unquestionably following them. You should always be skeptical. Be skeptical of what I say, be skeptical of what everyone else says. Try it for yourself, see where it goes. Weigh the pros and cons. Should I do meth? Or should I just have some coffee in the morning to wake me up? You should figure out what works best for you. So I'm trying to present to you an idea that worked really well for me and is continuing to work well. But here's the thing, a year from now, I'll probably improve upon it even more so. And maybe, there's a wild idea, maybe I find something that's even better than this. Because I continue to question and I continue to remain skeptical and try new things. That being said, you cannot change every week, every day, every month. You have to stick to whatever thing that you're trying for a number of months, and in some particular cases, i.e., investments. So, for instance, say you want to try your hand at real estate investing. Say you want to try your hand at stock investing, not stock trading, stock investing. Something that's a little safer and risk averse. So that's going to take a number of months and years to see if you're going to become successful in that endeavor, whether or not it's going to yield any monetary or financial results, be them positive or otherwise. So that's going to take a number of months or years. It's the same thing with your exercise, nutrition, sleep, and so on. You try something new, you got to give it time to yield the results. Otherwise, it might have worked if you stayed with it for 3 weeks, but if you only gave it 3 days, it might not have worked. And that's why the tracking is so important. Sometimes it takes longer than you want it to, particularly in my case, again, as a natural bodybuilder without the super special supplements. It's going to take me a little longer to get there, but I don't mind that. I've learned to thrive and enjoy the process because I like getting the small incremental increases. But in addition, I like that it's safer. All right. One of the things that happens when you take a lot of steroids, as an example, and you build a lot of muscle very fast, even if you do it in the safest way possible, what happens is you work out more and more because the steroids allow you to recover faster and you can put on more muscle, eat more food, and so on. Well, the issue is when you put on that much muscle too quickly, there is something that happens where you have protein and or muscle breakdown in your system. Okay, so you work out, you break down some of the muscle, and it gets filtered out of your system through the kidneys. Well, over time, if you do that too often with too high of a concentration, then you're going to cause damage to your kidneys, and that damage is not reversible in a lot of cases. So, if you go slower, you limit that damage. It's one of the reasons why you see so many bodybuilders who have abused steroids over the years, even the ones who didn't abuse them, but the ones who use them in the air quotes safe way, they still have kidney problems later on in life because they built so much muscle. It wasn't even directly the steroids that caused the kidney damage. No, no, no. The steroids allowed for an environment for the body to create this muscle, and through that creation of the muscle, the byproduct was a lot of muscle wasting. Take one step back, two steps forward. Well, every one step back where you degrade and get rid of some of that muscle through those waste products I just mentioned, it has to be filtered out through the kidneys, and that can damage them. When you're putting on pounds and pounds and pounds of muscle, that's going to happen. Now, if you do it slowly over the course of years, where you're gaining at most 2 pounds of muscle a year as a natural athlete, well, your kidneys can handle that and they aren't going to be damaged. Now, there's a chance they might, but not nearly as much. And that's just one of the many examples of a pro versus a con. The pro of being natural is that I can be healthier. I can stave off kidney problems because of that. The con is I have to wait longer to see the results that I'm working toward. And again, this all comes from discourse. This all comes from talking about it. I'm talking to you. Other content creators are presenting information to be delivered to you, the consumer, the audience, and you have to make a decision for yourself. You can go onto forums online and you can discuss them there. You can go onto social media in the comment section and discuss them there. There is a discourse. But again, somebody shuts you down and says, no, fuck you, that's wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, you're stupid, I'm right, I'm a genius. If you say that, you're going to turn people off, you eliminate the discourse, and nothing happens, nothing is solved. This is why there are people in every industry in the nutrition, fitness, health industry, there are people who are invested in their brand and their answer, or their right way, if you will. They are invested in that because that's what sells. That's what keeps them making money. Similarly to my first example in the beginning of this episode about Roe v. Wade, it is a political device. It is something that politicians can use to keep the back and forth going between us, the people, so that they can stay in power, because it's a political football that they can spike whenever they want. They can say, well, we might appeal this. What do you guys think? And we go, bah, 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 and we go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Meanwhile, nothing happens. There is no discourse. They do everything they can to just shut us down and pit us against each other on each side so that they can just keep doing whatever they want to do. They can pass whatever they want to pass. And when it comes down to it, eventually they have to spike that political football and show their hand, and then it's off to the races and out of their hands and into ours. We have the opportunity to come up with real answers and the right way as we determine it amongst ourselves, but the issue is if we eliminate discourse, we'll never do that. I'll give an example on Roe v. Wade. If you put on everybody's tax form a little box that says, oh, I don't know, maybe you're Christian and you think abortion is a sin, as an example. And you want to put on your tax form a little box that says, I do not support abortion, I am pro-life, and I don't want my taxes going to Planned Parenthood or any other funding of abortions in America or in my state, whatever it may be, maybe both. And they can check that box, and all of a sudden their taxes aren't going toward it. And then if they think abortion is wrong and they want to go further, they can go protest, they can go do things on their own. But at the very least, they know that their money is not being siphoned off to fund abortion, and they can feel better about paying their taxes. Now, on the other end, if Roe v. Wade gets appealed and there's an issue with women being made to take pregnancy to term, there is an option there also. You can make birth control, Plan B, and other Planned Parenting options much more available to young women of adolescent age and older, so that, like how they hand out condoms for free constantly at universities and even high schools in some cases, then you can have that accessible to women also. All right? As well as making things like medical procedures such as vasectomies and so on that are much safer than the female alternatives, more accessible as well. So you can create options for both of the sexes to make this a much more approachable experience. Now, I'm not giving my opinion either way because, again, I don't have the circuitry to birth a human. So I can't really comment. I can only present potential options for people to consider. But again, we determine what the right way is through discourse. We talk. We have a dialogue. There's nuance, perspectives to consider that we cannot hold. I cannot see through the perspective of a female. In the same way, if you're a trans man or a trans woman, you later in life changed to another gender, and you cannot see through the perspective of the gender you are becoming throughout the beginning stages of their life. What I mean by that, if you're a trans woman who is going through your transition at 20, 22 years old, you have no idea what it was like growing up as a little girl from birth to 20 or 22 when you started transitioning. Okay? So a good example of this, I have several friends that have made it clear to me that at a certain age, they had a creepy uncle who touched them inappropriately. At a certain age, they realized people started seeing them as sexual objects as opposed to a person. At a certain age, they had to become concerned with whether or not they were safe in a public space, particularly at night. So you don't know what it's like to have that lived experience as a trans woman transitioning later in life. Only a biological woman, born a female, lived their life as a female through those years, knows that lived experience. Now, the whole debate Can you define a woman? All these things. Not getting into that. All I did was give anecdotes and facts, lived experience of somebody born that way, going through life, where somebody born some other gender and then living with that gender until they transition. It's a difference. That's true. So I can present facts, I can present observations, anecdotes, and so on to allow a discussion. But if somebody just shuts me down and says, well, you're transphobic for even asking that, well, guess what? Nothing gets solved. No one gets anywhere. And people further isolate into their echo chambers. It's the same thing in fitness and nutrition and exercise and health. It's the same thing with these political issues, period. There is no right way to do this. And that's the point. And I hope you enjoyed. This episode is now over, because that's everything I have to say on the matter. Now, do you know where I fall with Roe v. Wade? Probably not. That's kind of the point. You do know, however, where I fall currently with how to exercise. Kind of. Basically, I think you should track everything. Do your best to increase the efficacy of your routine. And in particular, the one thing I left out, pause reps. I think currently pause reps are the right way to exercise. If you can pause the rep, then you can control the rep. If you can pause the rep, then you get to feel the muscles you're trying to use in whatever movement pattern it is you're doing. And you will learn that skill of whatever that movement is, be it the squat, the bench press, the deadlift, whatever. You will learn it intrinsically, implicitly, and become better at executing that movement. Because again, the more effective you are at execution, the more effective you are at going through that movement pattern, the better and more optimally you'll be able to do it, just like your routine. If you exhibit control and you track your progress, you'll do better. Plain and simple. Just remember, that's my opinion. That's what I'm currently doing, and is what is working for me. Try it out. Stick with it for a while. See if it works for you. If it doesn't, tell me to eat shit and do your own thing. Come up with what works best for you. Have a discussion. Read a lot. Take in what you think is going to work. Apply it and go from there. But that's all I have for today. Thank you all for listening. I've been the dude. You've been the cast. Have a great day. Happy Monday. Deuce Magoose, and peace out.
It's time to put our times behind. Get all the bad things off your mind. He's feeling good, she's feeling good, we're feeling good, yeah. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. Just hanging out, just having fun. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. There's nothing better than your friends, there's no problem you can't win. Someone that's always got your back, not caring about this or that. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. Just hanging out, just having fun. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. It's all about meeting new faces, the smiles on your face and you can't erase it. Partying on, it's going on, huh? Partying on till the break of dawn. Oh, it's time to put hard times behind, get all the bad things off your mind. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. Just hanging out, just having fun. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes.